Mr. Buckley gave you his favorite passage. Now I'll give you mine. Talking about these poor communists who are involved in all of this, and particularly talking about people who were asked to sign a loyalty oath at a particular time, referring back to the Reagan conversation, that he's not going to recommend people who can't say they believe in the free way of life and all that to people. In describing, quoting with approval, the effect that this had on these poor people, you said it caused them, and I quote, worry, depression, fatigue, fear, insomnia, drinking, headache, indigestion. It sounds like an Alka-Seltzer ad or something.
What I'm doing there, as you know, again, as to quote our new president, there, you've done it again, Roy. You know, what I'm doing there is quoting somebody else, as you know. As you'll see, it's within question.
I mean, you didn't put it in here because you disagree.
But what the whole tenor of these questions, I'll put it in quotes, seems to me is a kind of reflection of the attitude that pervaded that period. It's you cannot talk about witnesses before the Un-American Activities Committee investigation into Hollywood without dragging in Whittaker Chambers and Alger Hiss. You cannot talk about the American Communist Party without talking about an international espionage monolithic conspiracy. Haven't you learned that China and the Soviet Union are not part of an international monolithic conspiracy? That they don't like each other? That they don't like each other? In Mr. Cohn's
it wasn't Roy.
In Mr. Cohn's first question, you go over the whole list. That was the assumption of that question.
We were accumulating totalitarianisms, and they have a lot in common, including they hang pictures of the same people on the wall: Stalin, Lenin,
okay, but see, you're doing it.
And Engels.
You're doing the same thing.
They got at least that much in common.
Right. You're doing the same thing, Bill. See, here's what I object to. What I object to is, and I was very careful in the book, I think, to identify it and to discuss it in this way, that if you try to put the Hollywood blacklist or Joe McCarthy into the context of Stalinism, then of course you say Stalin is the greater evil, because Stalin sent 20 million people, or however many, to the salt mines and to the slave labor camps and to their death, whereas McCarthy was responsible for putting away only a few hundred. Of course, Stalin had a totalitarian society, whereas in the authoritarian regime that took over this country during the McCarthy years, you know, it affected many people, but not everybody. And of course, you go right down the list. But what that does is it mitigates it's intended, it seems to me, to mitigate one's outrage about the one thing that we can do something about. We were in this country. It was possible for us to resist those committees. Some people did resist, Bill, and that's the lesson, it seems to me.
Is an outrage at people who labored to enhance the reputation of the biggest mass murderer in the 20th century, namely Joseph Stalin. Yeah. If we can't be outraged against them, why should we be outraged against Jim Crow? Yeah. Why should we be outraged? People... It isn't to say that Stalin is a greater evil than Dillinger. Is not to say that Dillinger is not evil. I grant you.
And if you're discussing
nobody's
Dillinger,
asking you to write a book saying that Dillinger is less evil than Stalin.
Right. And if you're discussing Dillinger, it is what Harry Truman called a red herring to drag Stalin into the argument.
The presence of Stalin is a presence that affects the calipers by which we make relevant judgments. This is what you are saying.
Sure,
these calibrations are necessary in order to. In order to put this thing in scale, perspective.
And as you know, in naming names, I talk about that, and I quote Arya Nair, where he asks, is it necessary when you talk about Stalin to talk about the Tsar? Is it necessary when you condemn the KGB to condemn the crimes of the Okhrana? It's reductio ad absurdum, and it is a diversionary request. And ultimately, what it's designed to do is to take away from the basic question that this book asks, which is, what is there to be learned from the fact that during a time of trouble, hundreds of decent people did something which is indecent. Some resisted.
Okay, you say one word because we don't have too much time left. My argument is with the accuracy of your book. Everyone you quote with approval is a left-winger. You look at the index of people you interview. I found one or two out of maybe 100 who could qualify as the other side. One of them is a man named, a law partner of mine named Tom Bolin, who you say you interviewed. Now, he told me when you interviewed him, you then went ahead and told a story of a criminal case involving the magazine of which you are now the editor. Of course, you were not then, where you leave out the fact that the lawyer for that magazine was convicted by a jury of having forged and altered notes to cover up the part of the magazine in a key thing involving one of the trials of communist leaders in this country. Now, the book is full of this, from top to bottom. You don't give the other side an even shake here. You didn't talk to them. You didn't give them a chance. You didn't interview them, and you don't cite them.
David Cohn had the same problem in his book.
Of course, and that's
well,
quoted all through this book. This book
you're
is David Cohn. This is America's answer to David Cohn, or America's agreement
Unhappily,
with David Cohn.
I'm not suppressing you, but time is out. Thank you very much, Mr. Victor Navasky, the author of Naming Names. Thank you, Mr. Roy Cohn. Thank you, gentlemen from the Bergen Catholic High School.